Welcome to Rock Solid, the Round Rock Business Leaders Podcast. Join your host, Bryan Eisenberg, as he explores the journeys of entrepreneurs and companies across Round Rock, Texas. From startups and nonprofits to large organizations, each guest shares their passion for doing business in this thriving community. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rock Solid. I'm Bryan Eisenberg, and I'm joined today, most people will probably recognize you anyway, by Mayor Craig Morgan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I got to see you last night, and of course, they won't know when this aired, but I got to see you last night, and a couple things I want to touch on from last night. So the first one was that we got to be there for the unveiling of the Founders Wall for the Round Rock Chamber and the new Griffith building and all of that. And I also heard that you got started with tourism here in Round Rock. That was your first role. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it felt like and what you were telling people about Round Rock back when you first started, sure, compared to now they walk into that building with the Art Center and the Visitors Bureau and the Chamber?
Oh, yeah. No, I started actually with the state.
Okay.
But I covered smaller cities and stuff like that to just talk about the benefits of tourism and how it benefits your community.
Okay.
So many cities back then wanted to be Fredericksburg. And we're not all Fredericksburg. We're all our unique cities. And, so we really focused on trying to help other communities understand, here's where you can capitalize on your strengths. Here's your weaknesses, but here's who you are. And so they had a different perspective from outside set of eyes that had been across the state. And so it was one of those jobs that I really loved. I've always been attracted to economic development. I always thought I might be in economic development. And so when the state made some changes, I'd always kind of wanted to go to law school too. And so I was like, well, this is time for me to go to law school. And so I never really stayed in it, but I've always had a heart and passion for it. And
the Griffith building is remarkable. I mean, just hearing everybody who's walked in there, like I said, from the art gallery and the Visitors Bureau and the new chamber office. You shared a little bit about what the old chamber office was like. Can you kind of patch that for people? Because I think it's a real statement for where Round Rock is today and where it's headed to have that kind of a building.
Sure. Yeah, back in when we first moved to Round Rock back in 2005. My wife went to work at the chamber, and as I told the story last night, there would be weekends where she was like, hey, I got to go to the office. And I'm like, what's going on? I mean, why are you working on the weekend? And she said, well, I've got to go make sure the traps are set for the rats and check for if we've caught any rats. And so, and then as I became more involved and I knew about the economic development and stuff, I always thought, look, I mean, the chamber provides our economic development services. Mm-hmm. And so as I stated last night, there was an effort to try to do it privately. But, you're asking, companies to contribute to the chamber to be a member, momentum.
Yep.
And so it's not that it never got off its feet, but it was kind of a struggle. And so I'd sit with my city manager and said, look, the city's got to take more of an active role to get them in a building that makes them look professional and makes Round Rock look professional. And so we kind of brainstormed, and as the new library came up, because we thought that we might put that building on the market.
Okay.
Because it's valuable land. I mean, it's right in our downtown.
Right there, Main Street, yeah.
And but like I said last night, we had different locations we looked at. Same with the library. Those two buildings are meant to be in downtown for obvious reasons. And that's the first time I actually went in it, believe it or not. And I'm excited, and I'm so thankful for all the founders that contributed, and I just think that sets us up for the next 100 years in Round Rock.
It's a stunning space. I got to go to the art gallery as well. I actually was shocked that I got to leave them their first Google review.
Nice.
And they were kind of very happy to hear that. I'm a little bit of a geek that way with leaving reviews. And I hear all this controversy people have about, the art in there and the Cholula that's coming in. Why do you think people have to find a way to not see all the perspectives? Because I know, and I've heard from several people that one of your strengths is bringing people together, even when maybe people are seeing different sides of the story. Why do you think people struggle to see all those kinds of story, and why having something like that, what is it, $300,000
Right.
installment? People are beefing about it on social media. And
Sure. Well, I think that, when they ran that story, I mean, look, I don't think anybody on the council would have supported paying $300,000 for a piece of art if that came out of our general fund. And the media did us no service because they never mentioned where the funding came from.
Yep.
So it came from our hotel motel tax. So unless you stayed in a hotel in Round Rock, you didn't pay $1 for it. And so, but that's just the environment we're in right now, Brian. I mean, I've been doing this I'm on my 15th year.
Yeah.
And it's gotten more and more where everybody, we've got politicians that are wanting to divide us. We've got politicians that want us to be mad at each other. And I'm just that's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to lead that way. I'm going to make people mad. I get that.
Can't please everybody.
That's right. And there's consequences to all my choices. But, I try to meet with people that, I've met with people in the neighborhoods when they're not happy with us. I've met with people one-on-one, and I try to learn from them because I'm not saying their perspective's wrong, but is it the best thing for Round Rock? And there's things that, we meet, some things on the middle and some we don't. But I think what it helps is people feel like they're at least being heard and listened to.
It's a skill that is sorely lacking in today's environment. Everybody seems to want to shout their opinions without taking the time to learn from others and gain that value. And like I said, several people have come to me to tell me about what kind of leader you are, even in your early days. And I think this is just a great lesson for a lot of the business owners that listen to the podcast, that when two things. One, you've obviously been involved with a whole bunch of craziness, everything from, pandemic, floods, COVID, all those kinds of things. But also when you first came and started working city council and stuff like that, there wasn't that unified feel as much. And so what's the leadership lessons and the skills that you've developed that maybe they can apply to their business, to their organization, to their non-for-profit? Yeah,
I think for me, my wife and I have this discussion because, especially during COVID, I got called some pretty harsh names. And my thought is as I tell people, I don't take it personal. I mean, people have every right to their opinion.
Yep.
People are passionate about their whatever it may be, whatever the topic, whatever the subject may be. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's how we, in America, it's always been, let's express our ideas and we're different. I mean, and Round Rock's a very, very diverse community. And, I don't know if I really knew how diverse it was when I first came here. But now that I've been on the council and in the role I'm in now, to see the broad diversity, and I think we don't get as much of the division and the hate, because I think, we've got groups all throughout that really work to unify. I mean, this community,
special.
Yeah, this community's special. And I always say that the people are what make this community. And from a personal experience, what really hit me the most is when I had my surgery. And, in the hospital for 26 days. And there were people that reached out to me in this community that I can guarantee 100% that never voted for me. And they may not have voted for me since. But that meant a lot to me because it was heartfelt. We were going, it changed mine and my wife's life. Mm-hmm. And it just meant a lot to have that empathy and that compassion. And I think that's what we kind of lack is empathy and compassion for our fellow man. And I saw something the other day, everybody's going through something. And
sure.
And I try to just, live by that. And again, I mean, I just love the community because it just comes together. You mentioned some of the weather, tornadoes, the floods.
Yeah.
I mean, and the community just came together and just tried to help their fellow. They do love the rock. And so it's just, it's a special place. And so I want to try to lead that way. And I think it starts at the top. If I'm out there dividing us, then my citizens our citizens, my council, then they're going to be divided. We don't agree. A lot of people think, well, you always vote 7-0. Well, and some people think that's not good, but our Tuesday morning meetings, we have a lot of questions. And I do think that we listen to try to make the best decisions for, we're getting a lot of infill properties that are getting developed, and it's right by neighborhoods. And, it makes it hard because you've got, on one hand, property rights for an owner.
Yep.
And then on the other hand, you've got people that have been used to that being a vacant lot, and so, but, when people come up, we're not going to yell at them and they're not going to yell at us. And that's just the way I'm going to run it. And, I've said it 1,000 times, I'm not a perfect leader. What I try to do is strive to be better for the people around Rock every day that I'm in this role. And because it's been one of the greatest honors I've ever had.
When we look at some of the development and some of the, the buzz that's going on now, obviously everything from the district, that's going to dramatically change the face of Round Rock. Obviously, you would look at the data centers that are coming in, and a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about the data centers. And the big one that I took from your state of the city was the tax from these commercial places compared to the residential. So I definitely hope you can touch on that a little bit. But then, of course, downtown and how that's been changing and how you see that changing in the next few years as well. So I'd love to hear about your thoughts about, these developments and how that's changing this face of Round Rock.
Yeah, I think with, from the economic development standpoint, I've said that, we're a city now that we can be a little bit more picky. We don't have to have everything. And that's not a knock on any business trying to look at coming to Round Rock. We're also limited on space. That's one of our areas that we lack, and we can't change that part of it. But it's still important. And as you mentioned, the stat, for property taxes, a lot of people always think, well, why you keep giving these corporations corporate welfare? A lot of the ones that we've done of recently is performance-based. So if they don't perform, they don't get paid. So that's one thing. If someone bellied up and left, then we're not out any additional money. They just got the money that they were entitled to when they met their performance. And if they don't meet their performance measures, they don't get the agreement.
Yep.
But what that has done in the city of Round Rock is 92% of our properties, roughly 92, 93%, are residential properties. The other 7 is, commercial, multifamily, things like that. But of that 7%, almost 46 to 47% of the property taxes are paid. So as I tell people, if that's not happening, who do you think that passes on to? Because we're still going to have growth.
Yeah.
People are going to still move from, the Austin area or wherever to come to cities like Round Rock. And so, but we got to try to find the right mix. You mentioned data centers. Those are a controversial thing. There's no doubt about it. I just read an article today, and both views I get, one for them, one against them. But again, when we're looking at these types of properties and these types of structures and everything, we have to look at what's overall the best for the community. And, and it's tough. I'm not going to lie, it's tough. But, we've got one that we've been looking at off of Old Settlers, and, there's some neighborhoods that don't want it. But the alternative right now is a 400,000 square foot warehouse space. And they can put their docks wherever they want. They can, they can run trucks through the night.
That's going to do wonders for traffic.
Right. And so you create more traffic. Data centers, they don't bring a lot of jobs, but the jobs they do bring, very high wage, very limited on traffic, and, I know there's some stuff with the water. They're quiet. Stuff with water and power, but we require them all to be in a closed loop system, and with technology they may not even, and then they provide again another area. The property tax based on that is going to be much greater than on the 400,000 square foot warehouse space, which probably won't even pay for itself because of construction, road, and whatever.
It's not like the neighbor's going to love
right.
all of that either.
Right.
So it's always that compromise. I know that there's this Round Rock 2030 document, and I'm curious. You've announced your reelection, how you see that vision for 2030 it's not just a task list for you, is it more of a discipline in the way that we run the city? And because I've heard it time after time from so many people who sat in these seats that the city's been built on vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, one thing the city has done is they've really planned. I mean, I always use water as an example. We have water to our build out. Now, does that mean we're sitting on our laurels? No. We're looking for additional sources. We're, doing a lot of purple pipe, which the reuse water. What people don't realize is if you can use more reuse water, that actually puts more capacity into the system. Water's a very confusing thing, but I'm grateful because when I first came here, they were talking about the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority. Mm-hmm. And they did this agreement, and their people are like, well, why is it, you're not even going to use it for X amount of years. But now we're here, and one thing that Round Rock's really done that it's helped is that you've got other surrounding communities that have bought water from us. And then what we do with those dollars is pay off our debt. And so that's why you have one of the lowest water rates in the area, if not the lowest.
Property
where
tax
you start
rates.
Based on 10,000 gallons. You're at $78. Where you look at some cities, they're over 200 before you even put out, water, the tax rate. So you've got a plan. And so one thing we've done ever since I've been on council is we have a retreat. We don't go anywhere, so let me make sure that's clear. We meet somewhere off site here in the community. And we set out our vision and our goals, and we have 6 goals right now. The number one goal, as long as I've been in office, has been financially sound city. Those goals kind of can change. Mm-hmm. You mentioned downtown. That's kind of moved up, and I think there is a focus on downtown. And I think what we've got to do, we just did some rezoning down there to give entitlements. Because you hear people wanting more retail downtown, more restaurants downtown. Yep. We got to create that by having density. And so, and we've invested a lot of money in downtown, and with the Brushy Creek trail expansion, the bridge over Brushy Creek. Downtown's going to continue to only get busier and more active, but that's what people want to go and do. My first campaign, I'll never forget, I was out block walking on the furthest side of Round Rock, and a lady said, man, I just feel like we're so spread out and we don't ever, there's no meeting. Yeah. And, in our downtown, when I used to go to council meetings, I could find a parking spot easily. Now, some nights it's a little bit harder.
But there's still parking.
There's still
like
parking.
Austin.
That's right. There's still parking. But, that's you don't do that, though, reactive. Yeah. You've got to plan for it and have the vision. And, as I've said, our build out's supposed to be about $250,000. We'll go up to about 300,000. We're excited about the district. I think it's going to be a great product on the ground. I will say in my opinion, that we have some Asian retail versus some of our sister cities. Mm-hmm. And we've seen the leakage of sales tax going into other cities. But when that gets up and running, that'll be a great asset to the community. And there's other places right now looking that there's going to be some pretty big announcements, I think, coming.
Kind of flip the switch, because I told you I'm a little bit of a Google review geek. As a little bit of trivia, I went ahead and I found the top 3 most rated locations in Round Rock. Okay, number 1 is Round Rock Donuts.
Oh, of course.
Not a big surprise. Number 2 was the outlet malls. And number 3 was Kalahari. I haven't dug deeper than that, but if you had to put another 2 into the top 5, what do you think those 2 would be?
I do think that just in general, our downtown, I do think that is something that, just the whole atmosphere for it. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of that, I think, in downtown. And then Old Settlers Park's got to be in there somewhere. That's a gem. That's another great asset. Another, again,
and newly revised as
right.
well.
And in the vision. That used to be up where the McDonald's was on 620. And when they bought that property, they were like, that's so far out of the country. Out of the county. What are we doing? Well, now you're seeing that evolve. And that's another thing that people don't realize on the tourism side with Kalahari and Old Settlers. When we have these tournaments, and I know it gets busy on weekends, but those are people that are coming in, spending money at our restaurants, our retail places, our hotels, and then they leave.
Yep.
And use very little on our services. And so those are the things that you have to do to help. And I think that's when you look at communities and their tax rates and where they are, look at their commercial versus their residential, and then look at what they are doing to bring in additional monies through sales tax stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because, I spent a lot of years on the road with my son, and we travel for baseball, and, I know Bill's doing basketball now, so he's going to be traveling. I would so much prefer if there's a tournament in Round Rock compared to, and I'm not like little towns like Cameron and stuff like there's just nothing there.
Right.
And here, I mean, it feels like you're getting something really special.
Oh, yeah. And the thing for us is, it's getting competitive. I mean, a lot of cities are building these things, these parks and stuff back from my hometown. In that area, they're both cities are looking at building additional facilities and stuff. And so, one thing that also helps us, our location, I mean, we're in the center of America. We're in the center of all, the triangle.
Yep.
And so a lot of people, if they can cut drive times down and all that, come to one place. And then I just think the assets speak for themselves. We get rave reviews on our indoor sports complex, our multi-purpose. And so, it's going to be interesting to see it when it's all built out.
Speaking about Round Rock Donuts, they're going to be celebrating 100 years, right? And, I remember Charlie Culpepper talking about, and Will Peckham talking about, like there was not much else here, but Round Rock Donuts came from a small little bakery, and obviously, I don't know if you've seen, they produced a top 100 desserts of the world, and they're number 21.
Right.
That's
number one donut shop in the
number one donut shop. Yeah. Okay. And I'm, here I am. I'm a former New Yorker. I expected to see some stuff from New York there, but to see Round Rock Donuts there, that was pretty impressive. I'm curious from your perspective. Obviously, they've left a huge mark, and it's obviously global at this point. You may not have a global people remembering you 50 years from now, 75 years, 100 years from now, but if people could think of that warm donut and you 50 years from now, what do you want them to think about?
I get asked that quite a bit. Like I said, I mean, I've lived here for 20 years, and 15 of those I've been on the council. And that's how people know me probably the most, is through that. And people always ask me, what do you want your legacy to be and stuff? And, I don't do this for legacy. My legacy will be determined by the people. Mm-hmm. But what I do, I was just telling my wife this the other day. I said, what I do hope people will remember when they think of Mayor Morgan is that I was accessible to all the people. And I would sit down with them and listen and be compassionate and respectful, even though we may not agree. Mm-hmm. And so that'll mean more to me than anything, is that, say what you want about him, but the guy at least would sit and listen and interact with the people. And so, all the other stuff, it'll be what it'll be. And so I don't think about that a lot. Mm-hmm. When I move on, then, I may sit back and think of all the things that happened. But, this, as I told the group last night, when I first ran for council, that, the people that had, that were standing on their shoulders, all they told me to do is don't screw it up, And so I think we've got a great council. Their heart's in the right place. They love this community. And so we just been fortunate, And so I think the big thing for us is to make sure we're training that next group of leaders that are going to be sitting in these chairs as mayor and council members with the vision and the attitude that this city has always had. And that is, we try to get to yes. We don't just say no. Having, been born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and traveled all over the world, I've, been fortunate to speak in, 30-something countries, and, really got to see some amazing cities. There really is something truly exceptional about this community. No question. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited about doing the podcast and getting people to hear this story, because I think it's a great model for what goes on. And you've mentioned a couple of things today. You've mentioned, obviously, the diversity and just how unique it is. And I can hear Darwin Tankley's voice about him being, voted Entrepreneur of the Year. And he said, if he can do it here, no excuses, right?
I'm really curious because one of the things that also kind of like surprises me is, yes, you've got a great council, like every single one of them, and it's a very diverse group, all, caring people, magnificent people. But we've also heard that, all the partnerships that this city has had, with the chamber, with the council, everybody really kind of working together. How do we get that to happen in more places?
Man, that's a great question. Because I came into it, and obviously as I've been here longer, I've seen that, and I don't know if it's one of those things that has the train left the station for some of these communities. Again, I think it just takes leadership if you want to do that. We, as you mentioned, the diversity, the development, the partnerships with the chamber. The private partnerships, that's a very unique setup for economic development as well. The other thing that, organizations, there's so many different ones. We just did MLK and the community came together. Juneteenth will be coming up, the 4th of July, and people always say, well, how do y'all keep the small town feel as you're growing so big? But what I think is those community events and the stuff that we do in the downtown, it just brings people together. And I think that, we've become such isolationists, meaning we don't want to be out in public. We want to be on our phone the whole time. And that's just not good. I don't think that's good for any of us. I'm not saying you're not supposed to have some downtown. But I just think that, even like our churches, I went to a pastor's luncheon, and there's, usually churches are as competitive as anything about trying to get people in their church. But this pastor, Pastor Mark, has brought this group together for as long as I've been here, and they work to help be partners even in our city. And that's where the Love to Rock came out of and stuff. And so I just, I think you've got to be able to try to keep that. I think you got to try to keep the noise out. And I think that's why we've been successful, because I think leadership over time has said, we're not, and the noise has gotten louder, not less, but even, prior mayors, it never was about politics. It was about Round Rock. And so
the same way all the mayors have their former mayors still have their get together.
That's right. And so, so I just think that we've just been very blessed on that. And, there's other cities around and, in the state that clearly we can try to compare ourselves to make sure that, we're doing things that maybe that we don't know. there's no need in reinventing the wheel, but I would put our city up there with them as well, and so it's, again, I love the city. I love the people, and, I think the majority of the people that lives in this city, they're just good people. And if you've got just good people, everything else takes care of itself.
So, back in December, you announced your reelection. You're going to keep fighting for another few years to help us get to that next level of growth. And we've been through a lot of growth in these last 15 years that you've been around. What do you see as your biggest challenge over the next 5 years? Yeah,
you never know, right? You never know if there's another pandemic around the corner. You always have to be prepared. Just like this weekend with storms. If there's a lot of ice, we saw back in 2023 with that ice storm what it did to a lot of our neighborhoods with trees and stuff. And so you always have to be prepared for that. Any challenge for us is going to be our infrastructure. We're doing a lot of road projects right now, down Gaddis School Road, and it's about to get worse. And then we're going to be doing Red Bud. I don't think we're going to do them simultaneously, but, people get frustrated, and I understand, we all understand that. Yep. So infrastructure is always going to be a challenge. The growth's always going to be a challenge. I think what we've got to do is continue to do what's been working, and that is continue to plan and continue to plan for our future. We'll be talking about another bond in a year or two. Mm-hmm. And what will that look like? What will the citizens want? And we've always been very transparent about them, and I think that's why they've overwhelmingly passed. I look forward to watching and seeing these projects coming to fruition, because we had promised the citizens that they would be, within the 5 to 7 year mark, and we're way on our advance. And then as I mentioned earlier, I think that we really need to be, looking for that next level of leaders that want to come and be in this role. And a lot of times people, I don't know that I ever set out to be on the city council. I got here and immediately did a leadership Round Rock class, and then I served on a charter review commission. And then, I was asked, hey, maybe you ought to do planning and zoning. And then, a seat opened up on the council, like, hey, you'd be, And when I came on board, it was always interesting. When I came on board, I was in the transition of, kind of what they were calling the old guard. And I was kind of the, some of the new guard, but I was older than all the people that came after me, like Councilmember Peckham and Councilmember Basie and Councilmember Baker and the ones that have now since come on. But I think that's it. I think sometimes you got to sit and, you may not be sitting there right now thinking, man, I want to be involved. What's my passion? And there's times I think a lot of people don't even think about politics. Now, saying that, politics are dirty. And I think that's running off a lot of good people. And so we just have to really make sure we're training that next level, because I do think that you will see over time, we have several of us that have been on there a long time, and, you don't want to overstay your welcome in it. And, but you want to make sure you leave the city in a better place than when you found it.
For people who say that you're accessible, maybe they're listening to the podcast and haven't had the opportunity to sit with you or haven't had a chance to have a conversation with you, what's the easiest way for them to reach out?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is we have on our city website, we all have individual emails, is to email me saying that you'd like to, sit down and visit about X or Y or Z or whatever. And we'll get it set up. And, I like to drink coffee and visit.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today with us, and we're looking forward to seeing this next cycle and hopefully seeing the construction finish faster rather than later. So really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.